Victor French as Isaiah Edwards. Victor Edwin French was born on December 4, 1934, in California. In 1974, at the age of 40, he played Isaiah Edwards on Little House on the Prairie, a rough-hewn, hard-drinking man with a kind heart. With his signature straw hat, bushy beard, and natural acting style, Victor became the show's second spirit, joining Michael Landon in one of the most beautiful artistic friendships ever seen on American television. Victor French died on June 15, 1989 in Los Angeles, just 3 months after being diagnosed with lung cancer. He died at the age of 54, leaving behind 3 children and a beloved artistic legacy. However, according to Karen Grassle, who played Ma Ingalls, Michael Landon once said that French did not die of cancer but of alcohol. In a private conversation, Landon bluntly stated that he drank himself to death. That remark peeled back the final layer of mask, revealing the heartbreaking truth about the silent battle between fame and the wounds that French always hid. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $2 million. What is less well known is that the role of Mr. Edwards, the role most closely associated with Victor French, almost didn't happen. NBC objected strongly when Michael Landon offered the role of French, claiming he wasn't handsome or famous enough for the network to want. But Landon insisted on keeping his friend, saying, "I don't need an actor's face, I need a sincere heart," and he was right. From being a villain in Gunsmoke and Bonanza, Victor rose to new heights, becoming a companion, a surrogate father, and a symbol of kindness in the harsh prairie. But behind every touching scene were quiet moments that could not be named. French had gone through 2 failed marriages and struggled with alcoholism for many years. The pressure of being a great supporting actor, always in the shadow of others, weighed heavily on him. Despite appearing in countless films and TV series, French was often stereotyped as a rough-and-tumble but affectionate guy. It wasn't until he played Mark Gordon in Highway to Heaven that he truly smiled with satisfaction. "I'm working with the man I love," he said of Landon, and perhaps that friendship is actually the best part of Victor French's life. Carl Swenson as Lars Hansen. Carl Swenson was born on July 23, 1908, in Brooklyn, New York. He joined Little House on the Prairie in 1974, at the age of 66, as Lars Hansen, a Swedish carpenter and founder and first mayor of Walnut Grove. With his gentle face and deep voice, Swenson brought memorable depth to the character, becoming the moral and spiritual pillar of the entire community on the show. Carl Swenson died on October 8, 1978, in Torrington, Connecticut, at the age of 70, just days after filming his final scene in Little House. The cause of death was a sudden heart attack. His passing came as a shock to the entire cast and crew, especially since his character Lars Hansen had just finished filming, as if fate had dictated the script. His funeral was private and he was buried at Center Cemetery in Connecticut. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $800,000, a modest sum given a career spanning more than 40 years. But he was a man of great passion and respect among his peers. The uncanny parallels between the death of Lars Hansen on screen and the real-life death of Carl Swenson became one of the most haunting mysteries behind the scenes of 1970s Hollywood. Just days after filming the scene where Lars Hansen dies in Charles Ingalls' arms, Carl Swenson died without saying goodbye. People began to wonder if Swenson had become so absorbed in his role that he brought the character's fate into real life. Some members of the film's crew recalled that in his final days on set, he would often say cryptic things like, "I've lived enough of Lars's life. Now it's time for me to rest." The words now sound almost prophetic, but it was his death, a death so coldly associated with the character of Lars Hansen, that ensured that he would forever remain in the hearts of viewers, not just as a dedicated actor, but as someone who had become so completely immersed in a role that he could never be himself again. For those who believe in the so-called curse of an acting role, Carl Swenson's story is the most heartbreaking proof. Steve Tracy as Percival Dalton. Steve Tracy, born Stephen Crumrine, was born on October 3, 1952 in Ohio. In 1980, at the age of 27, he won the hearts of audiences with his role as Percival Dalton, the intelligent and gentle husband of Nellie Oleson, on the legendary series Little House on the Prairie. This role not only brought him fame, but also inadvertently led to a mysterious relationship behind the scenes. Steve Tracy died on November 27, 1986, at the age of 34, from complications of AIDS, shocking at a time when American society was still full of fear, confusion, and prejudice about the disease. His ashes were quietly scattered under the D of the Hollywood sign. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at $200,000, a modest sum for a budding talent that was forever extinguished. Throughout the filming of Little House, Steve Tracy was known as a gentleman, easy to get along with, and was particularly close to Allison Arngrim, the actress who played Nellie. They bonded, constantly joking and sharing behind-the-scenes details, to the point where rumors of their romance spread around the studio. But later, in his memoir Confessions of a Prairie Bitch, Arngrim revealed, "I was the only person on set who knew Steve was gay." In an era when careers could be ruined based on sexual orientation, Steve chose to keep it a secret. 6 months before his death, Steve bravely took the stage in the play AIDS U.S. Portraits in Personal Courage. He was the only professional actor in the play. The rest were real people, people living with AIDS or who had lost loved ones to the disease, telling their own stories. It was the moment he transformed from a TV personality into a symbol of courage, and it was his death that inspired Allison Arngrim to become a pioneering AIDS activist, as a way of fulfilling a final promise she made to her dear friend, Shannon Dougherty, who went by the stage name Jenny Wilder. Ernest Borgnine as Jonathan Ernest Borgnine, born Ermis Ephron Borgnino on January 24, 1917, in Hamden, Connecticut, United States, was in his 60s when he joined Little House on the Prairie in the late 1970s, playing Jonathan Garvey, the good-natured, athletic neighbor and moral support of the Walnut Grove community. With a calm yet powerful demeanor, he brought rare depth to the character of Garvey, leaving a deep impression on the audience. Ernest Borgnine passed away on July 8, 2012 in Los Angeles at the age of 95. The cause was confirmed to be kidney failure after a short stay at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. His funeral was a solemn affair, attended by fellow veterans and military personnel, as he had served nearly a decade in the United States Navy. At his death, he left behind an estimated net worth of $15 million, amassed over 6 decades of a career that included a marriage to legendary singer Ethel Merman that lasted less than 2 weeks. In 1964, Hollywood was abuzz when they announced their wedding amid a media frenzy. But just 32 days later, the dream romance ended in bitterness. No one knows the real reason, but Merman is said to have cut the entire Borgnine chapter from his memoir. The public was confused, and critics speculated that Borgnine's outspoken and fiery personality, famous for his role as a stern policeman in 1953's From Here to Eternity, had transferred to real life. The marriage not only drew criticism for his irresponsibility, but also temporarily dented his modeling image. Instead of being crushed, however, Borgnine threw himself into his acting career, proving that he was not one to be forgotten. After winning the Academy Award for Best Actor for Marty, 1955, he went on to appear in numerous films, including The Wild Bunch, 1969, and The Poseidon Adventure, 1972, demonstrating his versatility in both leading and villainous roles. He once said, "I'm not perfect, but I always stay true to my roles, because that's the only place I won't be judged." And indeed, from the small screen of Little House on the Prairie to the bright lights of the big screen, Ernest Borgnine lived a life that was not without controversy. Hersha Parody as Alice Garvey, born Betty Sandhoff, an actress. Hersha Parody was born on May 25, 1945 in Berea, Ohio. She captured the hearts of television audiences with her role as Alice Garvey, the gentle wife and devoted mother on Little House on the Prairie, beginning in 1977 when she was 32 years old. The role became one of the most tragic symbols of the series, with the tragic and haunting ending leaving a deep impression on viewers for decades. Hersha Parody passed away on August 23, 2023 in Norfolk, Virginia, at the age of 78. The cause was confirmed to be a brain tumor, a condition that left her dependent on family care in her final years. Her son, Jonathan Peveril, shared that his mother deteriorated rapidly and died surrounded by loved ones. Although never an A-list celebrity, Prairie net worth at the time of her death was estimated at $200,000, largely due to royalties from her iconic television roles. But what makes Prairie unforgettable is the controversial death of Alice Garvey on Little House on the Prairie. In a 1980 episode, her character died trying to save a child from a fire, a horrific scene that shocked millions. The death, many critics said, was cruel and unnecessary for such an iconic character. It was rumored that director Michael Landon deliberately pushed the script towards tragedy to increase ratings, although this deeply hurt Prairie herself because the audience could not distinguish the character from the real person. After the episode, she received harassing calls and was blamed for doing something wrong, even though she was just doing her job as an actress. The tragedy almost pushed her out of the entertainment industry. Although she had previously appeared in Mannix, 1971, and had a cameo in The Waltons, 1976, she largely disappeared after Little House. On a rare occasion, she attended a fan meeting in 2005 but declined to be interviewed, only smiling as she signed autographs. Many believe that Prairie carried lifelong emotional scars, unable to escape the shadow of Alice Garvey, a woman who burned into the hearts of audiences and the soul of the woman who played her. Dabbs Greer as Reverend Robert Alden. Robert William Dabbs Greer was born on April 2, 1917 in Fairview, Missouri. He began acting in 1938, but it wasn't until 1974, at the age of 57, that Greer made a lasting impression on television audiences with his portrayal of Reverend Robert Alden on Little House on the Prairie. A kind, patient, and compassionate pastor, he was present at some of the show's most important moments. From weddings to baptisms to funerals. Dabbs Greer died on April 28, 2007, in Pasadena, California, from complications of heart and kidney failure. He lived to be 90 and was buried in his hometown of Missouri. At the time of his death, his net worth was only about $800,000, a modest sum compared to the hundreds of roles he played over a nearly 70-year career. Unmarried and childless, Greer's life was quiet, like many of the characters he portrayed. But behind the gentle image of Pastor Alden was a simmering career shock that he never talked about until a brief interview with a local newspaper in the late 1990s. Greer admitted, "On a crew like Little House, I'm the only one who doesn't have a fixed shooting schedule. They only call when there's a wedding or a funeral." The comment may seem mild, but it is also deeply unfair. Although he blessed some of the series' most memorable moments, he was always left out of the main storyline. While Michael Landon, Karen Grassle, and Melissa Gilbert became the faces of a generation of American television, Greer was the man who walked out of the church, appeared on screen for just a few minutes, then quietly disappeared. Worse still, it's rumored that Greer was cut from several key episodes even after he arrived on set, due to lack of screen time. There were days when he would sit in the makeup room all morning just to say, "Amen." A source on the set once said it was that patience and his lack of complaining that earned him the respect of his co-stars. But it's also why he's become what some call the forgotten professional. Many believe Greer embodies the collective pain of thousands of supporting actors, never able to escape the shadow of others. Michael Landon as Charles Ingalls. Michael Landon was born on October 31, 1936 in New York. He became an American television icon when he took on the role of Charles Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie in 1974, when he was 38 years old. As a kind and caring father figure on screen, Landon won the hearts of millions and became America's TV dad for nearly a decade. However, his life ended in tragedy on July 1, 1991, when Michael Landon died at the age of 54 from pancreatic cancer. The disease had been diagnosed just months earlier during a ski vacation, sending shockwaves through Hollywood. Landon died at his Malibu home with his new wife by his side. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $40 million. Behind Charles Ingalls' gentle smile was a controversial and layered private life. In the early 1980s, when Little House was at its peak, Landon was embroiled in a tumultuous divorce from his second wife, Lynn and Go. Actress Karen Grassle, who played his wife on the show, revealed that Landon would often make lewd comments and brag about his revived sex life on set. At first, it was just awkward pranks and makeup. But then a secret was revealed. Landon was having an affair with 18-year-old Cindy Clerico, a stunt double for child actress Melissa Francis. The entire crew was exhausted. The fatherly image began to crack, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. Close acquaintances say Lynn, the devoted wife who once threw a Christmas party while her husband played cards in the office, followed a lead and caught Landon secretly dating his mistress. The media quickly jumped on the bandwagon, spreading rumors that she had thrown a bottle of vodka in her husband's face in a fit of rage. Although Landon attempted to rebuild his life with a third marriage to Cindy in 1983, the shock had not fully subsided. Veteran co-star Catherine McGregor refused to return for the series finale in 1984, not because she had become a nun in India as rumored, but because she was fed up with Mike and his treatment of women. And so, behind the studio lights and the audience's laughter, a series of mistakes, betrayals, and irreparable cracks all weave together to create a portrait that is both heroic and heartbreakingly painful. Shannon Doherty was born on April 12, 1971 in Memphis, Tennessee. She played Jenny Wilder, the orphaned granddaughter of Almanzo and Laura Ingalls Wilder, in the final season of Little House on the Prairie in 1982. Shannon was only 11 years old at the time, but she quickly drew attention with her bright eyes and natural, emotionally mature performance. Shannon Doherty died on July 13, 2024, at the age of 53. After a long battle with stage 4 breast cancer, which had spread to her bones and brain. In her final moments, she was cared for by her family, loved ones, and her dog Bowie. The famous actress left behind an estimated net worth of $5 million, largely from her iconic roles in Beverly Hills, 90210 and Charmed. However, Shannon's career was far from smooth. In the 1990s, she was dubbed Hollywood's bad girl for her numerous behind-the-scenes scandals. While filming Beverly Hills 90210, Shannon frequently argued with her co-stars, showed up late, and even missed shoots without explanation. Rumors of her diva attitude and temperament led producers to fire her after 4 seasons. Ironically, it was this rebellious nature that forever cemented Shannon as a bold, free-spirited personality. She became an icon for a generation of American teenagers, despite the turmoil behind the scenes. In early 2015, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Unlike many who choose to remain private, Shannon did the opposite. She openly documented her chemotherapy sessions, her hair loss on camera, and even shaved her head to sing on camera. When her cancer returned and spread, Shannon continued to share her difficult journey, undergoing brain surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation, and living each day with hope. She bluntly said, "If you ask, why me? I will answer, why not me?" This is no longer the image of a rebellious star, but a compassionate woman who turned personal tragedy into a mission to raise cancer awareness. Melissa Gilbert as Laura Ingalls. Melissa Gilbert was born on May 8, 1964 in Los Angeles, California. At just 10 years old, Melissa captured the hearts of audiences around the world with her role as Laura Ingalls Wilder in the beloved series Little House on the Prairie. The bright-eyed, curly-haired girl became a symbol of 1970s America, a pure rural dream where love and morality always prevailed. As of 2025, Melissa Gilbert is 61 years old and lives in a small house in the Catskill Mountains with her third husband, actor Timothy Busfield. Although she no longer appears regularly on television, she continues to write books and occasionally acts in plays. Her net worth is estimated at $500,000, a modest sum compared to her childhood glory, but there is darkness behind it. Melissa once admitted that the biggest shock of her life did not come from off-screen scenes. She shared that everyone expected her to be the perfect country girl forever. 2 failed marriages, a history of alcoholism, and a secret spinal injury had all pushed Melissa to the brink. There were times when she didn't recognize herself anymore, except for Laura Ingalls Wilder. But in the midst of the storm, Melissa found herself again. She played Jean Donovan in the 1983 film Choices of the Heart, a woman who sacrificed her life for Melissa's journey. Her encounter with Timothy Busfield turned her into a simple woman who would rather raise chickens in her backyard than hit the red carpet. Melissa Gilbert, more than anyone, knows how to write with both real pain and real happiness. Kevin Hagen as Dr. Hiram Baker. Kevin Hagen was born on April 3, 1928 in Chicago, Illinois. In 1974, at the age of 46, he won the hearts of millions of viewers with his role as Dr. Hiram Baker on Little House on the Prairie, a quiet, dedicated local doctor who always put the lives of others before his own. His image, with his black leather bag, kind eyes, and calm voice, became an iconic image of the healer on the harsh American frontier. Kevin Hagen died on July 9, 2005, in Grants Pass, Oregon, after a long battle with esophageal cancer at the age of 77. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at $1 million, a modest figure, but one that reflected a quiet, artistic life free of scandal and ostentation. What the public did not know was that his diagnosis of esophageal cancer was not simply a disease, but the result of decades of suffering and depression. In a private letter to a close friend, released after his death, Hagen wrote that he believed his illness came not from his body, but from the pain in his soul. As an actor often relegated to supporting roles, he often felt forgotten, seen as a mere plot device rather than a central character. That long period of invisibility left him feeling lost, and at times, he even questioned his own worth in the art world. And the most controversial secret was his decision to refuse chemotherapy when he was diagnosed with the disease in 2004. In a rare interview before his death, Hagen shared that he was not afraid of death, but only of living with nothing left to give. While experts criticized this as a resignation, many fans saw it as the final act of self-control from a man who had spent his life listening and healing others, but no one ever asked who would heal him. He chose the quiet path, accepting a role behind the scenes, and then left forever. Catherine McGregor as Harriet Oleson. Catherine McGregor, whose real name is Dorley Dean McGregor, was born on January 12, 1925, in Glendale, California. She made American television history when she took on the role of Harriet Oleson on Little House on the Prairie in 1974, when she was 49 years old. The character of Harriet, a grumpy, mean-spirited salesgirl, not only brought laughter but also became a salty spice to a series full of love and morality. Catherine died on November 13, 2018, in Woodland Hills, Los Angeles, at the age of 93. At the time of her death, she left behind an estimated net worth of $2 million. Unlike many of her colleagues who continued to pursue the limelight, she retired from the screen after the show ended and spent the rest of her life in local theater, teaching acting to children and practicing Hinduism. Notably, in 1984, when the cast reunited to film the final episode, she refused to appear, not because she was in India as rumored, but for a much deeper reason behind the scenes. Catherine suffered emotional damage from being surrounded by the macho atmosphere on the Little House set. According to Melissa Gilbert and McGregor herself, the head of the production, Michael Landon, would often make lewd sexual jokes right before filming. The stories about bee pollen, rejuvenation, and body shaming offended McGregor. As a veteran actress with formal theater training, she was not used to having her emotions interrupted by lame jokes. For McGregor, playing Harriet was not only funny, but also a deeply negative role, and she needed space to get into it. But amid the off-camera laughter, she began to feel lost. And then the real shock came, the affair scandal between Michael Landon and the young Cindy Clerico, then 18 years old. For McGregor, it was not only a betrayal of her personal morality, but also the collapse of her artistic ideals. She had been close to Landon's ex-wife Lynn, and had witnessed the full fallout from the affair. When Cindy, now Landon's new wife, was brought back onto the set as a makeup artist and wheeled the shiny Porsche into the parking lot, the family atmosphere of the crew was gone forever. McGregor no longer found the camaraderie or artistic respect she once cherished. And so, in silence, she stepped away from the spotlight, refused the final episode, and chose the path of spirituality, small theater, and inner peace to save herself from the price of fame. Richard Bull as Nels Oleson. Richard William Bull was born on June 26, 1924 in Zion, Illinois. In 1974, at the age of 49, he began playing Nels Oleson, the calm, mild-mannered husband who tolerated his difficult wife Harriet. on the hit television series Little House on the Prairie. Although his character was not loud or flashy, he captured the hearts of audiences as a calm father in a chaotic world. Richard Bull died on the morning of February 3, 2014, in Calabasas, California, from complications of pneumonia at the age of 89. In his final days, he lived with his wife, actress Barbara Collentine, at the Motion Picture and Television Fund. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $1.5 million, a modest figure but enough to reflect a stable career. Despite his quiet appearance, Little House was an unexpected turning point for Richard Bull. In a rare interview, he shared that the role of Nels was originally intended to be a small part in a few episodes. However, after a brief conversation with Michael Landon, the film's director and lead actor, he was offered a 7-year contract. Bull said he was shocked when he heard the news. Behind that placid face was a torrent of emotions. How could a stage actor, accustomed to playing supporting roles, sustain himself for so many years on a nationally renowned television series? But few people know that fame comes with a quiet pressure. Bull once confessed that playing Nels for so long, despite his popularity, sometimes made him feel trapped in a single mold. A private man who loved the stage more than the screen, he struggled to cope with the spotlight and the expectations of his fans. After Little House ended, Bull went on to work with Michael Landon on Highway to Heaven, a testament to their enduring professional friendship. However, he maintained a private lifestyle, staying away from Hollywood and choosing to spend his final years in a retirement home. And perhaps it is that simplicity that has become the most valuable legacy that Richard Bull left for the audience.